No one expected a quiet lake in a peaceful neighborhood to hide a battle over family, land, and dignity. One morning, a single act of cruelty shattered decades of memories. A bridge built by a grandfather destroyed overnight. He stood there, powerless, watching the remnants of his heritage swept away. But what happened next would shock the entire community and challenge everything they thought they knew about justice. Could one man's courage turn the tables on those who thought they were untouchable?
Before the chaos, his life was simple but full of meaning. Every weekend, he would stroll across the wooden bridge his grandfather had built decades ago, feeling connected to the stories, laughter, and hard work embedded in each plank. The lake shimmered under the sun, reflecting a life of calm and continuity. He loved the quiet mornings, watching ducks glide over the water and feeling the soft breeze against his face. Neighbors knew him as a polite, hard-working man who cared for his family and the land they had cherished for generations. The bridge wasn't just wood and nails. It was memory, heritage, and pride. It linked more than the shores. It connected the past to the present, the family to their roots. But as the years passed, the neighborhood began to change. New homeowners arrived, bringing their rules, regulations, and a cold, indifferent view of the past. The HOA, once a simple community group, grew stricter and more authoritative, enforcing policies that seemed arbitrary and unyielding. At first, he ignored the whispers, the paperwork, and the subtle warnings. But the tension was building, invisible, yet inevitable, like storm clouds gathering over the calm lake. Soon, the very bridge that carried his family's memories would become the first battleground, a symbol of heritage clashing with authority, of fairness confronting prejudice. And when the storm finally broke, nothing would be the same.
It started subtly. Notes slipped under his door, complaints about improper landscaping, unapproved structures, and safety hazards. At first, he thought it was bureaucracy, but the scrutiny quickly felt personal. Every inspection brought new fines. Every call with the HOA was met with cold politeness that masked hostility. Then came the notice that made his blood run cold. The wooden bridge, the very heart of his family's legacy, was declared illegal and ordered removed immediately. He tried reasoning, showing photos, explaining the history, the generations who had crossed it. But the HOA was unyielding. Days later, a group of men arrived, clipboards in hand, measuring, photographing, and taking notes as if documenting evidence against him. Their expressions were neutral, yet every glance carried a quiet accusation. Passers-by whispered. Neighbors watched silently, unsure whether to intervene or turn away. The injustice was compounded by subtle racism. Remarks about old ways and those who don't belong here echoed in every meeting. His protests were dismissed, his attempts to mediate ignored. Each act of erasure cut deeper than wood or nails. It wounded pride, heritage, and dignity. He began staying awake at night, pacing the empty rooms of his house, imagining the bridge gone, the lake altered forever. Anger simmered beneath a calm exterior, a storm brewing that no one could predict. The breaking point came one morning when he arrived at the lake to find workers tearing apart the bridge. Splinters flew into the water, boards fell with loud cracks, and he stood frozen, witnessing the destruction of a lifetime of memories. His heart pounded, fury mingling with helplessness. Could he stop them? Or had the HOA finally won, erasing not just the bridge, but a family's legacy? But even as despair threatened to consume him, a plan began forming. One quiet observation, one overlooked detail, one small action could change everything. The calm lake, so often a symbol of peace, now reflected the beginning of a reckoning, a confrontation that would challenge authority, expose prejudice, and test courage in ways no one expected.
The day the bridge fell, the lake seemed to mourn with him. Every splinter, every snapping plank was a heartbeat of history ripped away. He could barely move, frozen by shock and rage as the men dismantled what generations had built. It wasn't just wood. They were erasing memories, erasing identity, erasing him. The air was thick with tension, and the neighbor's silence felt like betrayal. But as he watched, something inside shifted. Years of patience, of being dismissed and ignored, surged into action. He noticed the dam nearby, the mechanism that controlled the lake's water. In that moment, a daring, almost reckless plan formed, one that could reclaim what had been stolen, one act that would send a message no one could ignore. His hands shook as he approached the control, heart hammering in his chest. Every step was a test of courage, a gamble against authority. The world seemed to hold its breath. Could he really take such a risk? The HOA, the men tearing down the bridge, the judgment of neighbors, it all pressed down like the weight of the clouds above. Then, with a deep, resolute breath, he acted. Water roared as it surged through the open dam, rushing toward the sprawling resort on the other side. The serene lake became a river of justice, a wave of poetic reckoning. Chaos erupted. Cars splashed, lawns flooded, and the luxurious property of those who thought they could erase his family's legacy was suddenly powerless against the force of nature and the will of a man who refused to be broken. The moment was exhilarating, terrifying, and righteous all at once. And as the water surged higher, the question hung in the air. Would this act be enough to reclaim what was lost? Or had he crossed a line from which there was no return? When the water finally settled, the once pristine resort lay partially submerged, a stark contrast to the calm lake that now reflected the early morning sun. The bridge may have been destroyed, but his family's legacy had not been erased. The community watched, stunned, as the man who had been powerless moments before now stood tall, a symbol of resilience and defiance against injustice. It wasn't just about property or wealth. It was about respect, recognition, and dignity. The act of opening the dam sent a message: no one has the right to erase history or belittle the lives of those they deem other. He had reclaimed not only the bridge in spirit, but the pride and voice of generations silenced for too long. The incident sparked debates across the neighborhood and beyond. Conversations about racial prejudice, systemic bias, and the subtleties of exclusion began surfacing in homes, schools, and online forums. People were forced to confront uncomfortable truths that discrimination can lurk in seemingly polite smiles, in strict regulations, in policies that disproportionately affect those society undervalues. For him, the aftermath was a mixture of relief, sorrow, and reflection. The bridge was gone, yet the fight for fairness had only strengthened. He realized that true justice is not just about punishment or revenge. It's about standing firm, speaking out, and inspiring others to recognize and resist injustice wherever it hides. In the end, the story leaves one enduring question. When faced with erasure and prejudice, how far would you go to protect what is yours and what is right? His courage reminds us that even in the face of systemic injustice, one person's resolute can challenge the narrative, awaken a community, and turn despair into action.